Hi, thank you. Welcome back for this last video on the cell. And in this one, we are going to talk about how cells connect to other cells. In other words, intercellular attachments. Remember that prefix inter meaning between cells. And so intercellular attachments are going to be found in all of our epithelial cells. Is how they attach to each other, how they attach to the tissue that's underneath. Sometimes we'll see them in connecting muscle cells, and sometimes we'll have some neurons connecting to each other, but we're going to learn about them now so we don't have to stop once we learn about epithelium, which basically is in the tissue lecture, which is the next topic we cover. So we have three different types of intercellular attachments we're going to be learning about today. They are known as the tight junction, which is the one closest to the surface. Then we have a desmosome, which is an anchoring type of a junction. And then we also have gap junctions. So anchoring junctions and gap junctions are not necessarily closer to the surface, further away from the surface. It's you can have both, or a cell could only have one of them, as we'll see later on when we come back and talk about them. So first, let's learn about a tight junction. So a tight junction is near the surface of the cell, and they go around the entire perimeter of the cell, and it's usually more than one layer. We have lots of them. And so what they do is they prevent anything from going between them, okay? So nothing out here can go down into there. In this intercellular space, nothing can get through a tight junction. So you must use energy to go into the cell if you want to come back on the other cell. And so the way it works is this is the plasma membrane of one cell. It has an integral protein. This is the plasma membrane of the other cell. It also has an integral protein, and then the two proteins lock with each other. And so as you can see, this example is showing 3 layers of these interlocking proteins, and there could be half a dozen, there could be 20. There's a multitude of layers to prevent things from going through. So nothing gets through, including water. So no diffusion, nothing. So places where we want to keep liquids not being able to go through, for instance, like your intestines or your kidneys, we would find lots of tight junctions. The second type of intercellular connection is known as a desmosome, and this is an anchoring junction. Now, I like to use both words so that you have the visual of an anchor. You have a boat and you're going to throw off an anchor with its chain, okay? You don't just throw the anchor. It's got to be attached to the chain, and so that's kind of what this is. So in a desmosome, it's much more complicated. So the first thing is if we look at the two cells, here's the plasma membrane of one cell, here's the plasma membrane of the other cell. We have this protein plaque. Notice there's no big protein, integral protein. We have this protein on the inside surface from which we have smaller proteins, which look kind of like a zipper, forming a zipper there. Okay? And is your zipper waterproof? No, it's not waterproof because it's not a tight junction. So yes, liquids can get through there. Has your zipper ever popped? Yes, if you put pressure on it, pops. But your cells are smarter than your clothing zippers, okay? Because also attached to those intracellular protein plaques is we have these purple fibers, which are keratin filaments. So think of them like the big guy wires that are attached to telephone poles that are tethered further along. This is the chain that has the anchor at the end. So if you look up here at the top, you have your desmosome, and here is your keratin protein attaching it down here to this part of the cell. So if you're pulling here, not only you're pulling here, you're also pulling here, everywhere all these keratin filaments are going. So what type of microscope picture is this? Hopefully by now, we've done this half a dozen times, you would recognize what type of picture that is. All right, so places where we have a lot of mechanical stress, like in our heart or in our skin. We want adjacent cells to stay attached to each other. We're gonna have a lot of desmosomes. And the third type is called a gap junction because it has a gap in it. Okay. So going back to our cartoon drawings, yes, I know y'all like the cartoon drawings better than the micrographs, but you're going to have to make that transition. So we have a cell here that has this flowery thing known as, which you don't need to know the name of, and you can see the channel in the middle of it, and then the adjacent cell has the same integral protein with the channel in the middle, and notice the two channels attached to each other. So in this picture, you couldn't see the channel between the two adjacent cells with their phospholipid bilayers, but on the orange ones, you can see that. And so what that means is anything that's inside this cell to the right can pass through the channel in the gap junction to the cell on the left, and vice versa. It's a two-way street, not just a one-way street. Okay. So this allows communication between these adjacent cells. And so ions, simple sugars can pass, and places where we're going to find a lot of gap junctions are going to be in cardiac muscle and something called smooth muscle, which you'll learn about what that is when we do tissues, which is the next topic. So that's it for the cell. And I know by now you're feeling, oh my God. This is where we would stop at the end of a normal 75-minute lecture. We would have covered all that, and we would come up with tissues for the second lecture. So I'll see you again when we return for tissues. Have a great day. Thank you.